Right. Hello, everyone. For me, it's afternoon. For James Bennett, I have dragged you up very early in the morning for this discussion. So I
Good
hope
morning.
you've had a chance for a coffee. How are you doing? And tell everyone where you are in the States.
Well, we're in Southern Oregon, and there's spring in the air. The daffies are blooming, and it's all good.
Do you know, that really makes me, I find it so interesting because I'm of the other side of the world, obviously in the south of the UK, and our daffodils are in full bloom as well. So it's really interesting, isn't it, seeing where the synergies are between what's happening in different areas. But we had a lovely chat a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to do a follow on to that. But today we thought we'd talk about dogs and some of the spiritual lessons that our dogs can teach us.
Yes, dogs, love dogs. God spelled backwards.
Yeah, God's fed duckwards.
It's another coincidence.
Yeah, and there's no such thing, is there? And tell me a bit about what dogs you've had in your life.
Well, we had what we think is, they do. I think they do their own brand of marketing at the shelter. What do you think? I don't know. Let's say he's this or that. But we had I think he was half Akita, half Golden. He was a lovely doggy. We brought him with us everywhere. He passed a few years ago. And I got this distinct, we had to put him down. He was starting to recluse and whatnot. And I got this distinct hit from him when I was with him, when he crossed over, that he felt like he was letting us down by dying. I mean, they're just so selfless. He's just such a nice boy. And then we got a Belgian Malinois. We didn't know she was a Belgian Malinois. We got her from the Sonoma County shelter. But we learned about Belgian Malinois. We got her because she looked similar to our last dog. And we actually contacted you some weeks ago, because anybody that's been around Belgian Malinois know that they're very strong personality. They like to have a job. They have to be occupied, and they're kind of intense dogs. So as Malinois go, ours wasn't too much of a hard case, but our physical setup in terms of our home here and not having any fences, it didn't really lend itself to having her. She had a very strong fur drive, as we discussed. And any other dogs or deer, she would pull on my wife really hard, all 100 pounds of her. And so we finally, after a few years, decided that we'd run an ad. And if the perfect home presented itself to us, we would place her. And a perfect home would just be like in a ranch, or an open space where she could feel like she had a job and she could run around. Because she wasn't very good. She didn't care for the leash. I don't care for leashes either on me. They make me feel very vulnerable.
And we're going to come on to this, so hold on to that bit, because when you finish this story, we're going to discuss that a bit as well.
So we told her, we vetted her for a couple of hours. They have a ranch and 40 acres, and we told them that if it doesn't work out perfectly, I'll be there in a half hour. And on Easter, we touched bases with her a couple of days after. We gave her Angel, and it just warmed our heart. She said that it was perfect. She observed for a day, which I can see her doing in the corner, but then she melded wonderfully with her 7 dogs and 8 horses and chickens and cats. And
so how
there's a little less. Go ahead.
Then? Sorry, I was going to say, because one of the things you were saying when you had her in your environment is she had a very high prey drive. So
yes.
How have they managed with their cats and her with that?
Well, it would seem that we indulged in a little bit of projection. She's not. Their cat nuzzled up to her while she was sleeping. Their rooster was chasing her around, and she got along with the other dogs famously. So a question I was going to pose to you today is, why is the on-leash behavior so different, so profoundly different than the off-leash behavior? Do they feel vulnerable, or?
It's a really good question. And I would say that that's not a great question to ask, because I think that's another projection that we humans use. And we like to blame the leash rather than the whole situation. So the thing is, when you've got your dog on a lead, it's all about the environment that they're in. So sometimes as responsible dog owners, we need to have them on a lead. But then it's not just the lead that you're looking at. It's the fact that they're then in your energy field. And it's also where you're choosing to take them on that lead. So I can guarantee that if you'd have put her on a lead in that ranch environment, you wouldn't have got the same behaviors as her being on a lead in your environment. So I think sometimes as humans, we jump to one scenario. It's the lead, it's the fence, it's the this, it's the that, without sort of really looking at the whole environment that it's in. Because when we put, particularly when we have dogs, we often put them in situations that they're not comfortable with. So as you said, you know, the interesting thing about breed, I'd like to discuss, I'm going to jump about a bit here, James, if that's okay.
Yes.
So I've got my dogs behind me here. I'm just going to excuse my thing. So we've got Indy on the sofa there. We've got Lola lying on the bed there. And we've got Star and Lola down there. So I've got 2 Romanian rescues and a Labrador here. Now, I don't know what breed the Romanian rescues are. They're a complete mix. And I'm really pleased with that, because knowing what breed your dog is almost a double-edged sword. And one of the things I want to discuss with you about dogs and what they treat us spiritually today is this thing, is that everything can either be a blessing or a curse. So in some respect, knowing her breed is really useful, because of course every breeds have their characteristics and their needs. But that's a bit like saying you are an American and I'm a British person. Well, how many different types of American and British people are there? So throughout this whole scenario, I've been asked a lot this standard question: well, what are the Brits doing about it? Well, what is a Brit? Well, as diverse as you could possibly imagine. And that's the same. So even with her breed, yes, there will be certain characteristics, but there'll be every range of personality within that characteristic.
Yes.
So for me, for the first time, having dogs that I've no idea what breed there is, it's funny because, well, mine are sisters, and you know, one of them looks quite like she's got some Akita in her, and that immediately raises some certain assumptions with certain people, and they can react to them quite nervously. So sometimes it's a real blessing for me when people say, what are they? I say complete mixture, because if I was to say, oh, she's part Akita or she's part this, immediately there would be judgments that come with that.
Just like people.
Just like people. So, but there are also some good sides. So coming back to the lead question, I think the lead is a bit of a red herring, because you said that your garden, or whatever you call it in America, yard, we call it gardens, don't have fences. But in the UK, you'd never be allowed to adopt a dog without a securely fenced garden, because any dog needs to be kept safe away from roads. I don't know where you live, whether you live near any roads or anything, but I'm assuming there must be one quite near for you to be able to drive to and from. So sometimes it's looking at the overall environment. So dogs can be much more reactive on a leash. Just like you said, we wouldn't like it. First of all, a lot of people put a lead around their necks, which can be very useful for certain training situations. But again, if Barbara came along and put a lead around your neck now and tried to drag you off somewhere, you would have some resistance to that.
That's why we don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
That's why we don't do it anymore. I feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
We would walk her 5 miles a day.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't a perfect fit. And I get what you're saying. What the lead does is it keeps them in your energy field.
Yeah.
And they're picking up on your energy, you know, the whole time. So Sunday, Easter Sunday, we made a follow-up call a couple of days after we placed her with them. And she said that she was just doing fabulous. She was chasing they were all chasing each other around the house.
Yeah.
Like puppies. And it just warmed our heart. It just made our Easter to know that she was happy, and they adore her, as does the family. She sent us a video of her running, which she's just enjoy when she's running. It makes you happy just seeing her. So
it's just so beautiful.
It worked out just perfect. So,
and this is where it's really wonderful, where you knew your dog really well and you knew you couldn't provide an environment, but you were very careful to vet the person and get that follow-up to make sure she'd gone somewhere good. And that is an ideal situation. And I'm having a similar conversation with another really good friend of mine who's got a very aggressive rescue Doberman, which is obviously quite a handful. But coming back to the leash situation, I think it's really fascinating because, yes, they do react to that because we're stopping them from making a choice in their natural behavior. But equally, you look at the situations where we tend to have them on the leash, and they tend to be more man-made constrictive situations, which are more of a high stress environment for a dog anyway. So if you were out in the middle of nowhere, I mean, around here where I am, we've got gorgeous forests and I can go completely off track, not meet anyone else. And it's really safe for me to let my dogs off the lead.
Perfect.
But do you see how it's the environment as well as the lead? Because if I had them on a lead in that environment, they wouldn't react in a negative way at all, because they were still in an environment that was giving them a real sense of security and peace. But often we might have our dogs on a leash in a built-up environment, or where there's lots of noise or pollution or lots of triggers for them that could make them feel uncomfortable and push their individual buttons. Similarly, as an owner or carer, as I prefer to say it, you know, one of my dogs can be quite fear reactive because, you know, she's missed out on that crucial socialization skills of her life. And if I allow her to step away and create her own bubble around her, then she's absolutely fine. But if she's forced into a confined space where she feels uncomfortable, then she's not. But sometimes in a human environment, I can't let her off the lead and let her go and find her space because there might be a busy road nearby. So I'm looking at the situation as a whole, and it's a bit like us in captivity, isn't it? In lockdown, every single person you speak to has had a different experience. So for me in lockdown, because I live in the middle of the countryside, I've got a really big garden. I can walk straight out my front door into the lovely heathland of woods. I'm fine. But a lot of my friends are in completely different situations. They live in flats in the middle of a city where everything's closed. And I was having this conversation with one of them, you know, a city when it's closed feels dead. The energy is horrible, isn't it? So it's meant to be vibrant living places, and that life comes from the human activity often with it. Whereas where I am, the atmosphere hasn't changed at all. So you've got a same situation, and you're talking about how lockdown affects people, but no two situations are the same, are they?
No. And there's a certain discernment that we need to employ when we take on a dog.
Yeah.
And forgive me for saying so, but a lot of people choose the dog based on what will look cool in the back of their SUV or their estate, as you would say, rather than maybe, you know, getting online, reading a little bit about the characteristics of because, you know, you get these big athletic dogs and coop them up, and you can have a dog that's a dream and a couple, 2 or 3 days in a row of that, and you've got behavioral problems, you know, and you can't be surprised.
So true, James. It's like, I understand you've got some exciting news and you're getting some lab puppies. Now, did you know Labradors are actually designed to move up to 60 kilometers a day?
Oh, not surprised.
Yeah, so people talk about Labradors. Obviously, Labradors are the ideal family pet, and we're going to come on to sort of why that might be in a moment. But
Mhm.
most people completely underestimate how much exercise their dogs need. And it's a bit like taking a young boy and expecting them to sit on at a desk all day. You know, it's just not
Exactly.
healthy for their physical and emotional self. They're not designed at that age or any age to be stationary. In fact, as humans, none of us are designed to sit at a desk all day, and look at the health and mental and emotional problems that causes. But,
Yes.
you know, talk me through, because it's going to be an interesting point. So what made you choose labs? What attracted you both to?
Well, I looked back on all of the most fabulous dogs I had ever met in my life, and a lot of them were labs. And we're kind of, I would be grateful and say that the last few months here or so, we're kind of in alignment, and things just kind of come along and fall into place, and manifest. So after we placed Angel, we looked on Craigslist. And as you probably know, with the COVID, dogs are much better merchandise now. The
Mm.
shelter here doesn't have nearly as many dogs as it did a year or so ago, because understandably people are home and they like the idea of the companionship. So
But what's going to happen once they come out of lockdown?
I don't know,
Mm.
but we saw an ad for Labrador yellow lab puppies, and it was just very, very close by to us. So we went over. The guy was in the Air Force, and I got a really good vibe from him. And there were 7 of them, and we got to meet the mother and father, which is, important. It was hard to get a good read on the mother. She was very sweet, but she was in mother mode, because the puppies were in the garage in a nice setup that he had. And the father, the dad, was just wonderful. I sat in the kitchen and he put his head on my lap, and we had it was like he had been my dog for a year. It was great. I had great disposition, not hyper or insecure at all. And so we couldn't decide between one of the girls and one of the boys, and we kept going back and forth. We were having a lot of fun with it, and then we just decided to get both. So we got a brother and a sister. We left a deposit with the gentleman, and his phone rang off the hook. We were the first ones there, and some other people came while, just as after we had been there a half hour. And just, they're great, great little puppies. So in 2 weeks, on May 1st, we get to pick them up. So that'll be fun. But I think it's better to have 2 dogs. I think that was part of the thing with Angel. I think that she would get bored easily, and I think that having input of another dog would really help. And I don't think it's twice as much work. So we're looking forward. It's going to be a lot of fun.
They need companionship. So one of the things I was thinking about when we were going to have this chat, James, is, why people love dogs. So, there's a standard joke that you get a dog person or a cat person. I happen to be both, because I've got 3 dogs and 5 cats. But, describe to me why you think people love dogs. What sort of characteristics makes them a dog person?
Oh, well, that's a big one. Obviously, the companionship. And as we discussed when we first met, our relationship with our dogs and cats is kind of a backdoor way into people understanding the spiritual, energetic, our spiritual and energetic self. When we observe the intuition and the understanding and the empathy that our dogs exhibit, it's a beautiful thing. And cats, we choose dogs. Cats choose us, don't they? They decide whether we're worthy or not. And there's so many lessons. There's so many lessons that we can learn from our dogs. our cats. First of all, they're a mirror. Second of all, they, like I say, they just, everybody knows unconditional love. They will absorb and alleviate illness, dis-ease when we're distraught. And it's just a wonderful thing. And so obviously dogs are much, it's more of an interdependent kind of dynamic. With cats, as we know, it's a little bit more of an aloof thing, depending on the cat. They're much more independent. But we've placed dozens of cats over the years, and we've had and placed, several dogs, and I love them both. Right now in our life, I think we're just gonna stick to the dogs, because we live in the country, and there's coyotes and mountain lions and whatnot, and we don't want just an indoor cat. So yeah, I think we'll have our hands full with our 2 Labrador puppies, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, you sure will. So it's interesting, some of those characteristics, like the unconditional love, the loyalty. When I sort of asked this question to a few friends before we came on, because I wanted to sort of understand what the appeal was and how people generalize dogs. And some of the things I got was that they're easier than cats because you can control them a bit easier. You can fence a dog in, you can't fence a cat in. The unconditional love, more compliant because you can train a dog easier than you can a cat. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, isn't that interesting that as humans, because again, some of those traits are wonderful, but they're quite easy, I would say. The traits of a dog are much easier for humans to sort of take advantage of or abuse than of a cat. So, for example, we've just been adopted by a cat, and cats will up sticks if they're allowed out and leave home if you don't get it right. But a dog will be very, well, one, it might not be able to, because it might not be able to physically get away. But secondly, it will put up with an awful lot, won't it, a dog? And that's quite an interesting scenario, isn't it? In terms of, I wonder whether people realize sometimes how much their dogs are putting up with.
Yes, they absorb our energy for better or for worse. And if I ever see anybody abusing a dog, and I'm asked to mind my own business, that's not gonna work for me. So one of the questions that I had for you today was, if I had a few, do dogs see, when we want to communicate with our dogs, do they see in pictures? In other words, if we visualize what we wish to convey to them, we seem to be more effective when we visualize it and embrace the thought ourselves with dogs. What do you think of that?
Absolutely. I think spot on. Dogs pick up all of our senses. So some people are very auditory, and they'll talk and use language. Some people will use sight, and so they can visualize things and pass that on communication wise to their animals. Some people will feel things in their body, and dogs will use all of those forms of communication. And just like us humans, some of them, so if I'm communicating with animal, I will feel everything that's going on physically with their body. And then they will send me pictures, so images. And I've got friends that are communicators, and they'll hear voices, like the animals will literally talk to them in a human voice, which I don't get. And they might not get the feelings. And it is very individual, but they definitely will pick up. If we really envisage something in our mind, they will pick that up. So quite often you can see people training, they'll be visualizing very strongly to sit, and they can easily get their dog to respond to sit to that without actually using any words. So I think understanding how much they're picking up from us on a non-verbal communication level is really, really key. And just like you mentioned earlier, also realizing that that can be a good thing and a bad thing, because you know, dogs are very uncomplaining generally. So people talk about them living in the moment, which I agree with in part, but I also disagree, because anyone who's had a dog that's had a troubled past or has been abused in the past will know, you know, you could be really kind as a human to that dog there and then, but they might have an inherent mistrust of humans because of their previous experience. So they do carry emotions, feelings, lessons from the past that can be quite tricky to get rid of sometimes. If you've generally, people think about dogs very much living in the moment. So, you know, the classic example is every day their walk is their favorite walk, which is just such a joy and such a good lesson for us humans. But again, equally, anyone who knows that a dog that's had trauma in their past knows how much of that they can carry forward. So even though I've had my two girls who have, even though they came from the same rescue home, they've got very, very different personalities, and they're almost opposite ends of the scale. So when we talk about the flight or flight response, Indy is, when we first got her, she would just hide in a corner, look in the corner and not move, and think, if I don't move, then I won't be noticed and I won't get into trouble. Was Lola would have a very big bubble, and she would guard that very strictly, because obviously these dogs were all fed together in a pen with no hiding places and everything. It's the best that the rescue could do. And they did a great job, because, you know, if not, they wouldn't be here today. But the same situation, completely different ways of dealing with it based on their inherent personality. So going back to your question, absolutely they can. And I use a lot with my animals, a lot of visualization techniques. Even when my naughty Idris cat, my little Romanian cat, who's a real roamer, he goes miles and miles and miles. And my husband doesn't worry about it at all. He's like, he'll be fine. He's so laid back. And I'm like, where's my baby? Haven't seen him for a day. Where is he? You know, and I'm out searching from everywhere. But the most effective time is when I visualize, connect in with him from a distance, and then show him that I want him home. So I visualize, I say, look, Idris, in my mind, I picture him in my hall eating his nice bowl of food back with me, and he'll come back. And my friend's done that with me as well, because if I'm too emotionally close, if I'm too in a much of an emotional state because I'm worried about him, then I don't connect in with him because I don't want to pass on that stress. So my friend did an amazing job, connected in with him, saw exactly where he was, told him to go home, gave him the image of going home, and home he trotted.
Another lesson, and something that we have in us as well, but that's been neutered. But going back to what we were discussing a little bit ago, you know, children, when there's arguing and, you know, bad vibes going on in the family, they take it personally.
Yeah.
Cerebrally, why would they take it personally? You can't get there. It's just an ism. It's just true.
Yeah.
Children internalize and they take it personally. And, you know, I think oftentimes dogs are the same way. So in the same way you wouldn't want to raise your voice and argue, a good parent wouldn't want to with a child in the car or in the living room, I suspect the same respect might be given to our dogs.
Oh, you're so right. And it's really, really interesting, because our dogs are completely dependent on us humans to look after them. We decide, it might be a bit different where Angel's gone on the farm environment because she's got a lot of freedom on a day-to-day basis, but most dogs in a typical home, you know, the human decides what they're fed, when they're fed, who they mix with, how much exercise they get. They decide what chemicals are pumped into them, what vaccinations they get, you know, what shampoos are using. They have no choice really at all. The only choice they get is really when they're let off the lead in a place of freedom. But even then, you know, it's not down to them who they interact with. So it's really, really fascinating. And one of the things I found absolutely brilliant about the lockdown, and I'm like, yeah, good, humans, you're getting a little bit of a taste of your own medicine, because I'm I get sick to death as an animal therapist, hearing people saying, well, I leave my dog all day on its own, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It doesn't mind.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how do you know it doesn't mind? Now, there was actually an interesting study done in the UK where they actually measured the cortisol levels and the stress levels of dogs. And literally like 99% of the dogs that the owners thought were fine being left weren't. They were in a very stressed state. But because they hadn't physically ripped the house up, and because they looked excited to see them when they came back, the owner thought they were absolutely fine, but they weren't. And, you know, you mentioned earlier about abuse, and abuse takes many different forms, doesn't it? There's obviously obvious physical abuse, and we're talking the same here for humans or animals.
Yes.
But there's also unintentional abuse where people, through ignorance or not quite thinking, are feeding their dogs diets that are really unhealthy for them. I mean, if you take most dog owners, a lot of dog owners, not all, because a lot are very educated on diet, but I would say well over 50% of dog feeders feed their dog from a sack of biscuits, the same food every day, what we call in the UK kibble.
Yes, here too.
Would you do that to your children or eat that yourself? First of all, no animal, however healthy a meal is, and kibble isn't healthy at all, no animal can eat the same thing every meal and be healthy. That's not how our bodies work. Our bodies are designed to live on variety and thrive on variety. And
Yes.
secondly, it doesn't take any scientific knowledge of understanding the processing to look at this hard brown lump and think, does that actually represent real food? You know, would I look at this and be fooled into me eating that and thinking I was getting a good, healthy diet, or does it look completely man-made? But so many loving animal owners don't give any thought to what they feed their dogs.
No, we do.
Yeah.
We do. It's important. And, you know, almost in the same vein, in terms of what we put in our dogs, I wanted to ask you what shots, if any, you think are appropriate to give our new puppies.
It's a really controversial subject. And like anything, it is always depends. I would always work with an individual owner and see what their risk factors were. The fact that people have puppies have their first shots at about 8 weeks of age, or sometimes even younger, is completely ridiculous, because biologically they've proven that they can't mount an immune system response at that age. So it's too early. They can't. They've still got the antibodies from their mother's milk. And also it really depends in terms of what risk factors you've got in your environment as well. But the least, the better. So I would suggest, you know, we would talk about that, about your individual circumstances. But what I would suggest is, first of all, I would do titer tests to look and see what natural resistance they had. And
what test? Can you say
a titer test? And it's a simple blood test that will test what antibodies they've got to the specific canine diseases. And it's like testing your natural immunity, and you can do it in humans and you can do it in all animals, and it will test what natural immunity you've got. So if you've got a new puppy that's coming to a new home, I certainly wouldn't vaccinate them before 12 weeks of age at the earliest. And personally, I would get my vet to do a titer test to see if they still had natural immunity at that stage. And if they did, I wouldn't vaccinate them at that stage. Because basically, it's a bit like the discussions that we've got going on at the moment, and there's some very prominent scientists that have come up to say that it's absolute suicide what we're doing, vaccinating people in the middle of an epidemic. Because if you've got natural exposure to something in the environment and then you go and vaccinate again, all you do is you make the virus, the disease, more virulent. You speed up the genetic modification of it. So I would basically work with a good holistic vet in your area. I would get a simple blood test, which is cheap and easy to do, and get them to test for natural antibody levels. And if they got resistance, I wouldn't do anything for 6 months at all.
And when you say environment, part of what should be included in the environment is if they're going to be exposed to a lot of other dogs.
Well, not just other dogs, but also, you know, just also in terms of how the owner's going to be feeding them, building up their natural immune system, just like we would. So if you're feeding your dogs a really good diet, if you're building up, if you're getting out in fresh air, you're promoting a healthy microbiome by being out in the woods, in natural environments which aren't heavily sprayed by pesticides and herbicides, which will kill off the microbiome, then your dog will develop a really good natural immunity. If you're going to be in highly contaminated environments, like near farmland or parklands that are sprayed with chemicals and things like that, then your dog's immunity will automatically be compromised. And then you might need to look individually at the different risk factors of the different diseases in your area. But I would never, ever give annual vaccinations, ever. I don't use chemical flea and tick treatments or wormers unless there's a specific diagnosed problem. So, for example, if your dog had a worm burden, which you can easily test through a fecal sample, and you hadn't managed to sort it by natural means, then you might, as a last resort, consider a chemical treatment. But I wouldn't give it preventatively.
Because there are natural oils that can prevent fleas and ticks from being attracted to our dogs. Is that correct?
Yeah, and worms, intestinal parasites and everything. So they really are. And with ticks, it's an interesting one, because even the chemical tick treatments, the tick still has to bite onto your dog to get the chemical, and then it just drops off and dies quicker. So it's not attached for as longer, but it doesn't stop them getting the initial bite in the first place. And they're highly, highly toxic, not just to your dog, but also to the environment. So there's a lot of problems with water pollution now from all the chemicals that people use on their cats and dogs and farm animals. So this is exactly the sort of thing you would look at right from the start, because starting your puppy off right is really, really important. There's some brilliant natural holistic vets that I can give you the contact details for, that have got some amazing information on their website for this as well. In fact, a lot of them are in the reference list of Angel's report. So, you know, looking at all these things, it's really fascinating in terms of what our dogs can teach us is I think all the conversations a lot of us are having now around the jabs, around natural immunity, around healthy diet, around vitamin D, around exercise, around how obesity massively increases our susceptibility. All of these questions are things that we should be asking about our pets of whatever species as well. Because our pets are often an early warning symptom for ourselves, because unfortunately pets have a shorter lifespan than us. Everything happens, you know, a dog at 8-9 years old is middle-aged, whilst a person at 60 years old is middle-aged. So, you know, you want to have those discussions early enough to give your dogs the best possible start in life.
Interesting how you know, these vaccinations and pharmaceutical industry drive the bus in the veterinary world, just like they do in our healthcare world. They have their own little brand of passport. If your dog hasn't had all the vaccinations, you know, you can't board the dog at, you know, certain places. We never board our dog. We bring our dog. We bring our dogs with us everywhere, you know.
And you've raised a really important point there. Again, I think this is, you know, why there's so many synergies between the questions we're asking about our dogs and ourselves. So the thing about the passports is really big news and on the forefront of most people's minds at the moment. But we don't question it with our pets. But I get so many people saying, particularly in the horse world, where they say, you know, yeah, but I can't compete my horse unless I've had all the vaccinations. And I'm like, well, if your horse reacts badly to vaccinations, then you'll have to not compete it. You know, again, you wouldn't do it to your child. And my view is always, if you wouldn't do it to yourself or wouldn't do it to your 2-legged children, don't do it to your 4-legged children. We get caught in this. Our animals have got a job to do with ourselves. We've got such a set thing about our expectations for those animals, whether it's showing, whether it's flying with them, whether it's putting them in boarding whilst we go off on our holiday and everything. And I just don't think people give enough thought to the implications of that. So if I said to you, look, James, you know, for you to go on holiday, you've got to get certain vaccines and have this vaccine passport. Oh, sorry, I'll just pause that minute. Postman.
You have a doorbell.
The postman appeared at my door. Lola, lie down.
Ah, the classic postman cometh scenario.
Guard dog, bless him, he's so sweet, but he keeps coming into the garden and everything, and I'm like, don't bless him. He means well. He's come all the way up the garden with my parcel. So yeah, so I sort of say we tend to get caught in this scenario. Is I want this. I've got an objective. I want my 2-week holiday. Therefore, my dog has to go in boarding kennel. Therefore, they'll have to have the vaccinations. But we can get very tunnel vision that that's the only solution, when actually there's loads of other solutions. So for myself, if we go on holiday, we always get an animal sitter, a trusted animal sitter into the house. So there's so many different solutions. It's not boarding kennel or nothing else. And I think, again, you know, people are starting to think outside the box because it's starting to affect them. I'm really hopeful that they're going to ask these questions rather than blindly go and do things to their pets without adequate research. And if you're in an area where there's a specific disease that's prevalent, then I would do, just like I would do with my children or myself, I would do my research. So I would look at the particular vaccine on offer. I'd look at the prevalence of the disease in my area. I'd actually really research it to say, is there any evidence that the vaccine is effective? I'd look at the ingredients of the vaccine and weigh up the risk-benefit analysis and make a decision based on that. I wouldn't just blindly go and do it.
What a novel thought, looking at the ingredients of a vaccine before it's introduced into a bloodstream.
Exactly.
Who'd have thunk?
Yeah. So it's really, really lovely that, you know, I think because some people have been through some horrible situations themselves where they've had a lot of their choices taken away from them, I'm hoping that it's going to make them look at how our animals live in our environment and how many decisions we make for them and how much we really know, is that the right decision for them or not? And just like we are in this current scenario, just to keep questioning, is there another way? Is my dog trying to tell me something? You know, what is a natural behavior for a dog is another thing. You know, again, a lot of people say they've got a behavioral problem, but it's only in their minds it's a behavioral problem. We had a perfect example here where my dog started barking because the postman, a man they don't really know, came up in his uniform and his hat through their garden to the gate. Now, I want my dogs to bark in that situation, but I also want to have a release command where I say to them, it's okay, they're allowed here, that's enough. And then they know that I've noticed it and I'm happy with that situation. Whilst if it was a burglar or a murderer, I wouldn't be saying that's okay, I've had enough. I'd be letting them go for it. So understanding that that's their job, they should be warning. They should be warning me that there's someone in their territory, and it's absolutely right that they should be allowed to guard it.
Well, it ties into what we spoke about on our last Love versus Fear podcast. Just another parallel. You know, we need to have empathy and it teaches us empathy and not continuing to pay homage to the game of separation where everything is separate. You know, everything is not separate. And the other thing we discussed last time is how when we are not engaged with ourselves, like the kind of the empty cabin in the woods, if you don't have a sense of ownership with it, somebody really bad could move into your cabin. Yeah. And the dogs serve as an instrument of engagement with ourselves rather than being vacant. And as we discussed last time, when we're vacant, and in other words, the dogs are very appropriate for a lot of people because it keeps them engaged in their lives, and the companionship and everything is invaluable. Just look at the suicide numbers since this, satanic COVID scheme was imposed on everybody.
Just tragic.
It's just so tragic. And so everything happens for a reason. I just hope that we're learning, and I hope we hurry up and learn more.
I think we are. And I think it's, again, it's quick kind of asking the questions and not beating yourself up when you make bad decisions. Because, I look back, I've had animals all my life of all different species, and I've made some really bad decisions in the past, but I've done it from a place of love. But once I've realized, I've made the corrections. But we'll all do that. I mean, no one knows how to be a parent. No one knows, the perfect things. But if you keep those communication channels going in all areas of your life, if you keep an open mind, then that's the best I think we can hope for. Because when we're constantly sort of looking at those feedbacks from your dogs, do they look shiny? Do they look vibrant? Are they playful? Dogs should be really playful. Even my dog, my lab, who's 15 and a half, she's still really, really playful. But equally, she gets quite nervous when the youngsters are really going mad because she's worried she's going to get knocked over. So it's my job as her mum to protect her for that and take her away to a safe space. But I think, people sort of think it's never too late to change either, because, when we're taking the diet, a lot of people get taught by their vets, right, feed this prescription diet. And now they have prescription diets for different types of dogs. I mean, it's so ridiculous. I mean, again, it's a bit like, come on, people, engage your brains. Do you really think that one kibble for Labrador and one for this? And would you sit there and eat that same thing every day? Would you sit there and eat a lump of brown balls and expect it to give you any vitality and life force? But so long as we're constantly looking at our dogs and saying, right, what's their behavior? What do they look like? What's their breath like? What do they smell like? Are they energetic? Am I meeting my needs? Am I being consistent with them? Because again, you see so many people that do nothing with their dogs all week and then take them for miles at the weekend, which for some bigger dogs can be quite damaging to their joints, for example. It's a bit like me at my age, suddenly doing nothing all week and then doing an really intensive aerobics class on a Saturday. It's not going to do me any favors. But I think just this questioning attitude and just constantly looking at them and letting you give the feedback, because at the end of the day, they will give you feedback as long as you ask for it.
Engagement, an excuse to walk. And as we know, when we go for a walk for a half hour a day, especially if one of the millions of people that are struggling with weight issues, you get more mileage out of it than just that little half hour walk. You're jump starting your metabolism. And just another wonderful reason to love dogs. I meant to ask you something. Pursuant to our last talk, I believe that the square root of our existence is love or fear. You can run its lineage up to assigning it to one of the two things. So, and if there's the only two emotions that elicit a physiological change in our body. So I believe it is the primary polarity of our existence. But what I wanted to ask you is, when we have a dog that acts vicious, is it fear?
Same answer as always. It depends. It depends what your definition of vicious is, and it depends on the circumstances. Because dogs can react with aggression to lots of different stimuluses. So fear is often one, because it can be self-protection. But equally, would you call aggression if they went and caught a prey? Which could be a very natural behavior, because our dogs, their innate instincts, they've only been domesticated for a short amount of time of their evolutionary history, regardless of what you believe in evolution. So even a domesticated dog has got a lot of natural instincts in there, and often they don't have an outlet for that in the way that they're kept. So I think always asking the question in terms of, is it fear? Is it actual aggression? Is it a natural behavior? or non-natural behavior, is it appropriate that they're exhibiting aggression in that circumstance? So let me give you an example that happened to me this week. A couple of days ago, I was walking my dogs out on their harnesses over the lovely woods with my husband, but we were on a really narrow path and there's a quarry the other side of the path. So you can't, there's woods that side with a fence and a quarry there. So it was very narrow and we were a bit trapped. And we met another family coming the other way. So we had our dogs on the leads because I know there's loads of deer in that wood there and also the steep quarry. So for safety, we had them on their harnesses. And the person coming towards us, they had a lovely old golden retriever. Now, most times golden retrievers have got completely fail-safe, you know, temperaments. But I could see this golden retriever. He was really old as well. He was looking at my dogs in a really odd way. And I thought that, you know, this isn't a friendly look. So I moved as much off to the side as I could because I know one of my dogs has got quite a big safety bubble that she likes people out of her personal space. But this other dog launched at my dogs really aggressively. Now that dog could have done it for loads of reasons. I think it probably did it because it was in pain. So it's a bit like fight or flight. Do I go in there first and not look vulnerable? Or do I let them have a go first, sort of thing? Because this dog is very arthritic. So, but whatever the reason, their dog, obviously I didn't know the dog well, so that's just an assumption. But the owner did absolutely nothing and just sort of laughed and sort of said, oh, he gets a bit overexcited. But one of my dogs was really fearful, really terrified. And she would have bitten it, you know, if I didn't have her under control, whether she was on the lead or not, if he did that, because she's got every right to protect her personal space. And normally dogs will give a lot of signals first. Normally they won't just launch. But this dog did, probably because we were all in an enclosed space. So the owner just laughed and didn't even call his dog off. And I said, look, can you please call your dog? Come and get your dog because you're really scaring my dogs and it's not fair on them. They can't move away anymore. And it's not fair for me to tell them not to react when they've got a right to protect their personal space. And he's like, oh, don't be silly. It doesn't matter. You know, he probably won't bite, sort of thing. And I said, look, if I came up to you on this narrow path and I went like to you, you'd be terrified. Would you find that acceptable? He said, well, don't be so ridiculous. That's completely different. I said, it's not different. You know, you've got a right to not be scared by me. My dogs have got a right not to be scared by you. And it's this. So in that situation, it was a tricky one for me because how much do I tell my dog not to respond? It's a bit like if you had a child with you and some aggressive man suddenly rushed up and started prodding and poking it or something, you'd fight that man off, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So when we're looking at dog aggression, it's like, is it appropriate for me to tell her she can't express herself in that situation? Because is it fair for me to expect her not to protect herself? I would say no, it's not fair for me. I don't want her to feel that she's not allowed to protect herself. That's a natural survival instinct. And unfortunately, us humans, me and the other human, have put them in a situation that was going to elicit those responses. So I think it's very difficult to sort of judge aggression in terms of how much of it can be pain, which is related to fear. It can be a prey drive. So, you know, some people will say their dogs will be aggressive if they catch a deer or a rabbit, but that's not aggression to them. They're catching it because of their prey drive. So, but a lot of it is fear because they're put in an environment where they have no control over.
So I think some of the other reasons might be like you're saying, an offense is the best defense.
Exactly.
To them. Also, sometimes I think they believe that they're doing their job.
Completely.
A lot of dogs like to have a job and they are paying homage to you and substantiating their worth by doing their job.
Yeah. So that's where being really clear on our communication with the dog and what we would like, not what we don't want, what we do want is fine. So in that situation, I was telling my dog it's okay, and then I stepped in front, put myself in front of between her and the other dog because I thought she's got every right. Now obviously I didn't want her going for the other dog because I felt sorry for the other dog as well. It wasn't his fault he had a useless owner that put him in that position, because the whole thing could have been avoided if they'd have just put their dog on the lead.
Oh,
So sometimes the lead can make them feel more secure because you're taking away a difficult situation where, you know, often 9 times out of 10, it's because us humans have put them in an artificial environment where they can't behave normally. Because
yes,
most dogs will sort themselves out if they have unlimited space, as will most animals. They will not. Their natural instincts are they must not get injured, because if they're injured in the wild, they're really vulnerable to infection and death and predation.
yes,
But if we put them in a captive environment where they can't escape, then we've got to, you know, use different tools and techniques to sort of say what's appropriate, what's not, etc. But, you know, I think this is where I always look at it, and I don't immediately judge that a dog's right or wrong for reacting in that situation. I'd be like, okay, my job is to keep my dog safe because I've put them in that position.
yes, I get it. And, you know, I have strong feelings about people that, you know, why, when I'm going for a walk, why should we feel terrified? You know,
Exactly.
it's very irresponsible. Another question I had was, so when we feel that emotion that we'll call cute, when we see a puppy or an animal and we think it's cute, or sometimes beautiful, what is that? Is that projection? Is that God giving our soul a little nudge? Is that where is that where does that come from? Is it appreciation? What do you think? Where do you think that comes from? All of the above?
I think it's all of the above. I love the appreciation bit of it, because when I think, you know, gratitude and appreciating the beauty of everything, and I think that is the beauty. You know, someone might look at a Pomeranian. My friend's got Pomeranians and they're just absolutely adorable. They're like little live teddy bears, and someone else would want a big strong Doberman, and it's the age-old thing where beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. But I think when you come to something that's cute or beautiful, it's just the appreciation in all its glory. So when you see like a vibrant dog of whatever species it is, most people can look at that and appreciate, wow, you are really well designed. You're really
What a
well.
beautiful animal.
What a beautiful animal. And then people will have their individual preferences. So some people have that strong mothering instinct and they might want something cute and cuddly that they can cuddle. And someone else, you know, my other neighbor, he's got a big Doberman and it suits him down to the ground. You know, he can strut around with his Doberman and they're really, really well matched. And I think that's the beauty of all creatures, great and small. There's something for everyone, but most people can appreciate beauty and the fact that, you know, you look at a dog, and look at mine now, and you know, how can you not love them? How they're just so adorable. You know, it's I think, you know, do you think it just reminds us of all that's good in the world, of how amazing, whatever you believe about creation, of just looking at it and just appreciating in the here and now the beauty of it?
I think that when we are appreciating nature, whether it be an animal or out on a walk, we are in alignment. We're in alignment with source. And as you say, it raises our vibration. And you know, doesn't it seem like dogs are more popular now than ever?
I think people are just so grateful for what they offer us. I mean, dogs are so gracious in terms of how much they give. They are the absolute example of giving so much and taking so little. And of course, that does leave them open to abuse. But I think they are so happy to be of service to us, whether that's just as a loving companion or as a guard dog, or in whatever role that might be. You know, a little bit of appreciation goes such a long way. And I always say to things, I mean, you know, when you see people talking to their dogs, I think if people could talk to each other a bit more like how they speak to their animals, hopefully the world would be such a better place, wouldn't it? It really, really would.
Yeah. And it's like other aspects of our lives. When the line between giving and receiving is, you know, indiscernible, that's when we know we have it right. And you can't tell if you're giving more or receiving more. That's when you're in alignment, whether it's with humanity or with our pets. You know, that's when we're in alignment. That's when we know we've got it right. We're being of service to each other, or are being of service with our pets as they are with us. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's just beautiful how popular they are right now. And, you know, something you would never see 15, 20 years ago in America. You'll see these big macho guys with their big trucks. That's popular here, you know, in the country, because the fuel isn't quite as expensive. And they'll have a little dog that's, you know, they'll have a dog that's 3 pounds and proud of it. You know, you never see that before. It reminds me of a funny little story. I went out with a girl many years ago that had a 2.5 pound Yorkie.
Wow.
And one day she wasn't home, but I went to unlock the door upstairs at her condo, and it was those modern open kind of stairs. And I was carrying groceries, and the little dog would turn around and go to the landing and then turn around. Well, one time, I mean, you couldn't get it this perfect if a director took 100 takes, turned around and slipped through and was holding on with her front paws. And I dropped the groceries and leaped, and I didn't make it. And I heard boom, 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 boom. It was carpeted, thank God. So I ran to the bottom of the stairs, and the dog was some distance from the bottom of the stairs, 4 or 5 feet from the bottom stair. And the little guy, you know, when something's not alive, the feeling you get, he had lost his color and was losing the color in his mouth. And so I got on all fours and started giving the little guy mouth to mouth. I used my index finger for the palpitations. And I'm pretty sure I saved maybe he was just in shock. It took a full couple of 2 or 3 minutes, but I think maybe he just got the wind knocked.
So he was all right. Please tell us he was all right.
Yes, he was fine. And
God,
it's funny how these little dogs sometimes have such a strong personality. You know, we have a rule in our house. If I'm going to have any dog running our household, I want it to weigh at least 35, 40 pounds. Otherwise, it's quite demeaning, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a Jack Russell, you know, a little Jack Russell terrorist, you know, they can be, talk about having a personality trait with a breed. They can be running your whole household on the first day. You know?
Completely. Well, I've really enjoyed this day. We could talk about dogs forever. And I think the couple of, what are your closing comments that you would like people to get out of this when they're thinking about what dogs have got to offer us?
Just engagement, love and engagement. And of all of the lies that we've been told, and we've been told many, almost everything is a lie. Perhaps the biggest lie of all is that everything is separate.
Yeah.
As we discussed when we, drew a parallel to the quantum physics behind it, everything is not separate. Everything is connected. And our connection with our dogs remind us of that. And it is a time that we can dip our toes into the energetic, spiritual, intuitive world that we were intentionally disconnected from. And it's an opportunity to remember who we really are. And the dogs will remind us.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'll just add one thing to that. From my perspective, I would really love people to keep asking their dogs what is it they need to make them thrive, truly thrive spiritually, emotionally, and physically, and keep questioning, because we can all learn new things all the time. And when we try and see things through the dog's point of view, so for example, if you get a dog, you know, do a little course yourself on what dogs should be eating and how to feed it, you know, because it will reward you 10 times back. Because you know, when you see how much they thrive with these tiny little adjustments that you can so easily make, it's just the most rewarding thing ever. And they reward us in so many different ways. So every little bit that we can do to give a little bit back to them is really, really worth it.
Yes, indeed.
Well, hopefully next time we speak then, what are we at? Yeah, you might have your babies to show us on camera. How exciting.
Yes, it'll be exciting, all right. It'll be a learning experience for everybody.
It'll just be absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that today. And we will definitely speak in a few weeks' time when you've got your new little additions to show us.
We will do that. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thanks, James. Bye.
Bye-bye.